Hi there, this is Ben Goldfarb, coming to you from Colorado, author of Crossings, How Road Ecology is Shaping the Future of Our Planet, which I know you just read in the Boise Climate and Sustainability Book Club. And I want to say thank you all so much for reading and engaging with my work. It truly means a lot, especially given that I know many of you are involved in natural resource management, and it's great to know that the people who are in positions of authority and policymaking power are again engaging with this work. So that's really meaningful to me. And when you read my books, you do me a great honor, and I wanted to say thank you for that. And it's also really meaningful that folks in Idaho are reading this book. I wrote a lot of crossings while living in Spokane. I spent a lot of time in Idaho in working on this book, as I think you may know, having read it in a couple of contexts. First, as you know, there's a chapter about the history of the Forest Service's road network, and as I've mentioned in the book, there are national forests out there, including in Idaho, that have higher road densities than New York City, thanks to all of these historic logging and mining roads that spiderweb our public land. And even though those roads aren't especially high traffic in most cases, they're doing a lot of ecological damage in some cases, by bleeding sediment into fish-bearing streams and by allowing human incursion into sensitive wildlife habitat and so on. And so, Idaho is, as you've read, among the leaders in removing and decommissioning those old forest roads, or at least the U.S. Forest Service in Idaho has done a lot of that work. It's not the state necessarily doing that work. It's of course the federal government on federal lands, but the point is that a lot of that work has happened in Idaho, and that folks around the country have kind of looked to some of your national forests as examples of how road decommissioning can really be effective. So that's really meaningful and a cool legacy, I think. But as you've also seen in Idaho, any restrictions or removals of those forest roads can be highly political. Forest roads are how we access our public lands in so many cases. I certainly spend a lot of time driving forest roads here in Colorado, and I use them to get to fishing holes and trailheads and fire towers and all the places I like to hang out too. We're all public land road users, right? And so, understandably, the idea of curtailing public access via roads is often very contentious. And Idaho, along with Utah and Montana and a few other states, has really been at the center, I think, of that access battle over the last several decades. So it's just to say that it's a really important topic, I think, to engage with in Idaho specifically, as are wildlife crossings, right? I know that you guys recently got your first wildlife overpass not too far from Boise on Highway 21, I believe. So congrats on that. That's a huge win. But I think that by and large, Idaho probably hasn't done quite as much on the wildlife crossing front as some neighboring states, such as Wyoming, especially, which is really a leader in wildlife crossings. Colorado, Montana, the northwestern states, Oregon and Washington, have certainly done a lot of this work. And so I think that even though Idaho is making progress, compared to its peer states, it might be lagging behind. And I think there are a couple of reasons for that. First is that, unlike Wyoming, which has these really large migratory herds of elk and mule deer and pronghorn, I don't think that Idaho quite has these big game migrations in the same way. Yes, there are some migrations, but they're not quite as discrete and defined as they are in places like the Red Desert in Wyoming. Although, of course, some of those Wyoming deer do get up to Idaho. Island Park Girl, very famous migratory mule deer who made it to Idaho, as part of that Red Desert to Hoback Junction migration every year. So there's some migrations in Idaho, but I think that by and large, you don't have 1,000 elk crossing the same highway in the same place every single year as you do in Wyoming and Colorado, creating a really discrete hotspot for mitigation. And I could be wrong about that. And obviously there are lots of places where deer and elk winter range overlaps with highways, and those require mitigation. But it's just kind of a different ecological context in some ways. And it's also a different social context. I think unfortunately wildlife crossings have become political in Idaho in a way that they're not in other states. I don't really write about this in the book, but a few years ago I did a story for High Country News about proposed wildlife crossing on Highway 20 near Island Park that basically got scuttled by local resistance. I think that some of those local objections were, reasonable. Things like the view shed impacts caused by, roadside wildlife fencing. But that wildlife crossing also got enmeshed in what I would consider kind of conspiratorial thinking about its part in a larger, plan to keep people out of their land. So just to say that I think that saga in Island Park, unfortunately made wildlife crossings contentious in some places in Idaho in a way that they're not really elsewhere. We know that these are solutions that have generally very, very widespread, broad public support. Here in Colorado, something like 85% of residents support more wildlife crossings. Obviously, they're great for, whatever you care about. If you're a conservationist or a hunter, or you just don't want to, hit an elk and go to the hospital, there's something in there for you. Obviously, wildlife crossings are great from a kind of a cost-benefit standpoint, since they prevent a lot of, big, expensive, dangerous collisions, which is why they've been widely embraced in most places. And hopefully that overpass near Boise, will make wildlife crossings more visible and acceptable and palatable in Idaho. Because certainly it's a state with a huge amount of wildlife that could absolutely use more mitigation. And hopefully you all reading this book and talking about these issues is part of that movement. So again, thank you all so much for reading Crossings and for talking about it in your book club. And even though I no longer live in the inland Northwest, I definitely get up to Idaho a lot, and hope to see you all in Boise at some point in the next couple of years. All right, have a great day and enjoy the discussion.